Throughout history, cars have represented a lot more than just transportation. I see them as pinnacles of engineering and art, to the point where being an automotive designer was the first dream that I ever had as a child. A lot of people believe that design is the most important thing when it comes to making a car desirable. It is the first impression that you have of the car, and it sets the tone for how you perceive everything else about it. Then why do we see car brands consistently pump out weird and often ugly looking cars? And why do the customers keep buying these cars regardless? I took a step back to answer that very question, and I found that there are three nuanced angles to this. So let's start with the simplest one: technology. Technology and design go hand in hand. The engineering limitations, developments, and budget constraints in the manufacturing process are the deciding factors on how a car looks. While it has gotten more cost-effective to manufacture a good-looking car, what makes a car good-looking has not changed all that much. If I showed you a luxury car from 10 years ago along with an affordable one from that same era, you'd be able to give me a long list of visual elements that are objectively better on the premium car. Making fancy lights and sharp angular body panels used to cost an arm and a leg. Do you know how many arms and legs Lamborghini had to sacrifice to make this? These premium elements have quickly trickled down to the lower segments as well. And before this news reached the German car executives in their fancy German mansions drinking their fancy German tea, the Koreans almost had bridged the gap. The sharp body lines, sleek and intricate headlights, high quality paints, shiny wheels, and overall better fit and finish levels that we used to associate with luxury cars became standard fitment in every car on the street. For the first time ever, luxury cars did not have any obvious ways of visually differentiating themselves from the affordable ones. The only way left now to make a market-leading product is to make it weird and hope that people like it. The luxury car makers have had to get creative out of desperation in order to make their products stand out from the rest of the traffic, including the old cars that they made in the past, along with the new ones that sell for 1/10 of the cost. Do you understand how ridiculous that sounds? This situation has given rise to trends, but in a very different way compared to the past. Trends are obviously nothing new to the auto industry. Since the very beginning, there has been one fad after the other. But what's happening now is not just a phase. There is a high possibility that from here on out, technology will not be a differentiating factor in design for a long time. And I say that because that's what we've been seeing for the past 5 years or so. There cannot be an objectively better design if everyone is using the same tech and have similar manufacturing capabilities. Because of all this, Mercedes and BMW have ended up making more experimental, hideous designs in the last few years than they did in the entire century before that. Audi, on the other hand, have stuck to their guns and tried to make advancements in technology. Instead of making strange-looking cars that beg for attention, they made the digital matrix and OLED lights that are very cool, futuristic, and fun. But the differences between these and traditional LEDs are too subtle to create a distinctive visual identity. Thomas and James from Throttle House said it the best.
Like, it drives like a sports car, this thing.
Yeah, we've hustled in it.
I really like this car. For the money, this is already pretty much my choice. As great as those are, I would just save the $100,000 and get what is essentially the perfect big Audi.
But it does have no road presence.
Okay,
At least in this spec.
It has no road presence, fair enough.
The Audi has no road presence. And that was despite some of its competitors being almost painful to look at. So sadly, Audi too will have to resort to these cheap tricks eventually to keep up with Mercedes and BMW. This speaks volumes about how shallow we are as consumers, because we gravitate towards an uglier product that looks more expensive over a more beautiful one that resembles something a little more modest. The other angle is marketing. And social media is the main driving force in this. Internet culture is fueled by only three things today: opinions, counter-opinions, and Sydney Sweeney. It's almost become bad etiquette to allow someone to change your views on a topic. In an environment like this, the polarizing and ugly designs lead to more comments. More comments equals more engagement. More engagement equals more reach and views. It becomes an incentive to the automotive publications to create more content about such cars. These cars almost go viral on the internet and even stick out like a sore thumb on the streets. It's a classic example of any publicity being good publicity. I know some of you still don't believe me on this, so let me give you an example. The Hyundai Creta made from 2020 to 2023 was generally regarded as one of the ugliest cars ever in India. But it turned out to also be the best-selling Creta of all time in just 3 years. Not only that, but it also outperformed the Kia Seltos in sales by about 33% in each one of those years. Seltos and Creta are sister cars. They share the chassis, the drivetrain, and have nearly the same feature sets and pricing as well. The only thing separating them was the brand name and design. And most of you will agree that the Seltos looks better from almost every angle. Of course, there were other factors that played a part in this. But this data at the very least goes to show that the people were not completely put off by the questionable design of the Hyundai. It's because the Creta, despite being weird to look at, never gave the sense of being an inferior or cheaper product. Seltos, despite being beautifully designed, blends into everything else on the street, just like the Audi. Creta, on the other hand, stands out like the BMW. And for the people who did have strong feelings about the excreta-like appearance of the Creta, Hyundai had already made the facelifts before the original car even launched. And that's not an unusual thing. With every new car announcement, a lot of companies already have the facelifts ready to go before the original car even gets announced. Sticking to the Creta example, we can see that the car that launched in 2020 got a facelift immediately in some international markets in 2021. Another facelift in 2022 that made it more palatable, and then a third facelift to essentially the same car in 2024, and that finally made its way to India. And frankly, this one looks the nicest. Not great, but I can't hate it. This strategy of keeping the best for last often means that the first version of a car is purposefully left unfinished or outright flawed. They strategically leave room to add or fix things in the design in the upcoming years to keep it looking fresh and appealing. This is so obvious that I can already show you what exactly the next generation Creta will look like. Why do they go through all of this trouble, you ask? Well, besides the car constantly getting media coverage with every little update, it also gives you, as the customer, the illusion that this company listens to us. It is so that you feel emotionally invested in the progression and the glow-up journey of a car. It's like a very slow movie where the hateable character finally redeems himself in the climax of the film. And that brings me to the third and final piece of this puzzle, the emotions. Car designers used to have a free and liberal hand with design that was unrestricted by the clinically perfect tools of AutoCAD.
4 inches on the final car, but I do all my real work with real lines. So I know exactly what I did.
They used to draw inspirations from nature, architecture, art, and fashion. But today, car design gets oversimplified to the point where it has no personality whatsoever. For example, Tesla's Model S, 3, X, and Y are so obsessively tuned for aerodynamic efficiency that they are even more generic looking than the Chinese EVs. For the better part of automotive history, it felt like form and function went hand in hand. And they were both given equal importance. These days, it seems like form and function cannot communicate at all. We have unnecessarily big and fake grills, ducts and inlets that go nowhere, make-believe exhaust tips, the subliminal hint of a bash plate to create a rugged image in your head, and imitation aerodynamic pieces like fake diffusers that serve no real purpose except for making the car look more complicated in the name of sportiness. Eye-pleasing designs are going off the trend. Designers used to be great observers of motion, volumes, and intricate details that told the story of how design seamlessly blends into aerodynamics. And these stories used to bring life to the cars. People all the way from the legendary Gordon Murray to my brother Kaustubh, who has been an automotive designer for a handful of years now, agree that car design is now lacking in purpose, character, and identity. In the age of fake and digital everything, being real is going to be the next step in good design. I predict that cars will go back in time and use analog, tactile elements that give you a better sense of quality and attention to detail. I picture something like the steampunk aesthetic and the half analog, half digital machines from Star Wars. We already see these characteristics starting to take birth in hypercars like the Pagani Utopia and Bugatti Tourbillon. They have done away with a lot of unnecessary electronic bits even in the interior and made it as mechanical as they could. Taking things to that extreme level is not a practical solution for everyday cars, of course, but meeting that vision halfway will do wonders in how emotive a car feels. Since the start of this video, I've been trying really hard not to say cliche things like design is subjective. But this discussion is frankly incomplete without it. If you look at a car that makes zero compromises and does reasonably well in every facet of being a car, you'd see it from a very practical and logical point of view. But there is something profoundly beautiful about flawed perfection. It's difficult to explain why, but we often feel a deeper connection with things that are imperfect in ways that we are willing to accept. The process of falling in love just gets accelerated when you try to look for the pros so that they can outweigh the cons. Most designs today are a con to a lot of people for sure, but at the same time, there's still a lot of pros in there for you to discover yourself and fall in love with the machines the same way we always have. Thank you so much for staying till the end of the video, and I hope you enjoyed watching. These videos take a long time to research, write, film and edit, so please like, subscribe and especially share so that these videos reach your enthusiast friends as well. I'll see you in the next video. It's about Ola Electric. I don't like them.